like a bell cut.
Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another video. Now today's video is very special. It's one that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. Now when I was growing up, I didn't really have any idea what PAL or NTSC meant, not until the late 1990s. Whilst I'd heard those words, I basically thought PAL meant UK and NTSC meant any foreign game, and that wasn't exactly right. It wasn't really until the Dreamcast came along when I started to realise what it meant and the differences in games. When you could flick that switch between 50 or 60 Hz on a Dreamcast game, you instantly realized if you picked 60 Hz, you would have more screen size and most of the games would run slightly quicker. So fast forward to a few years ago when I re-picked up my Sega Saturn, one of the objectives was to get it modded so that I could actually play games in 60 Hz and actually experience the differences for myself. So now my Saturn is completely modded. I thought, you know what, it's time I made this video. So I've gone through the Saturn's library. I've picked 10 games for us to take a look at today and draw a comparison between them side by side, 50 Hz versus 60 Hz gaming on the Saturn. So sit back, relax and enjoy my video of Saturn 50 versus 60 Hz gaming. We've got 10 games to go through, so let's crack on. So of course we're going to start out with Sega Rally, one of the most popular games on the system, and the major noticeable difference here is the geometry of the cars. Obviously the NTSC version of the game has a slightly larger vertical screen size. It's not massive because Sega Rally was optimized for the PAL version when that came out, but really this one just boils down to whether you prefer the geometry of the PAL cars or the NTSC ones. And actually, in my opinion, I do think the PAL cars look a more natural shape. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is up next, and there is absolutely no defense for the PAL version here because the difference in the viewable screen size is criminal. If you were playing the PAL version when this came out, you were seriously gimped. The characters look quite squashed down in comparison to the more natural look of the NTSC version, so the NTSC version comes out on top hands down. Virtua Fighter 2 is next, and I've never really had any problems with the PAL version of this game. I've always felt it looks good and runs good. Of course, we've got the minor difference in the vertical screen size being superior on the NTSC version, which gives the characters just a slightly more realistic size and shape in my opinion, but that's really the major difference. There's no real difference in the way they perform in my opinion. So good old Duke is up next, and this was one of the games that was optimized for the PAL region very, very well because the screen size is almost the same as the NTSC version, and that's the only difference really in my opinion. It's a great looking game whichever version you play, and they did a fantastic job with the PAL version of getting it almost as good as the NTSC edition. So Tomb Raider's up next, and yes, it's got a slightly bigger vertical screen size again. The downside is though that I feel Lara just looks slightly too slender and too tall really. I feel like she's got a more natural size and shape on the PAL version. The major difference is though the fact the NTSC version just runs quicker and it makes the game better to play. So if you're going to play Tomb Raider on the Saturn, I strongly suggest you play the Japanese or American versions. Another 2D fighter now in the form of Golden Axe the Duel, and after playing Street Fighter Alpha 2, this one surprised me because the PAL version is almost as good as the NTSC version. Again, it's that minor screen size difference that makes the NTSC one better. That really is the only difference. They don't really play much different in terms of speed, and both of them are actually decent looking performing games. But again, of course, that superior screen size means the NTSC one is the better choice. Moving on to Daytona USA next, and there is no defense for the PAL version here because the size of those black borders on this version is shocking. Imagine that NTSC one is filling the screen top to bottom, and then you look over at the PAL version and you've got huge black borders. There is absolutely no defense for this. The NTSC version wins out 10 times out of 10. Virtua Cop is up next, and I've actually always been impressed by the PAL version of this. It's the only version I'd ever played until I did the recording for this video, and then I realised that the NTSC one is vastly superior in terms of viewable screen size. That really is the only difference, but just check it out. It's clearly got a bigger screen size on the NTSC version, so of course that is the version to play. Rayman is up next, and whilst the screen size is obviously once again slightly bigger on the NTSC version, the fact that this one plays slightly quicker is the biggest benefit in my opinion. The PAL one's not bad, but once you play the NTSC one, I think you're not going to go back. So again, you're going to be playing the NTSC version of this game too. So moving on to our 10th and final game, I've gone for King of Fighters 95, another 2D fighter, and without a doubt it's also another massive sinner on the PAL release because the size of the black borders on this game, not just at the top and bottom but also at the side of the screens here, are unforgivable. I was very, very disappointed when I first played this game because I don't think it's a great game anyway, but the fact the screen size is so poor on the PAL version means you're going to be choosing the Japanese version every day of the week. Well, there we have it, 10 games compared PAL versus NTSC, and there can be no comparison because the NTSC versions win out pretty much 10 times out of 10. If you've got a way to play those on your PAL system, that is without a doubt the way to play them on the Sega Saturn. Of course, these are my thoughts. Maybe some other people out there differ and think some of the PAL versions of other games are actually superior. Maybe they've even got some examples to give me in the comment section down below. And like always, I am always interested in hearing those comments. Let me know down below. And like always, I will be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.